Okay.
My name is Steve Perkins, and today is May the 24th, 2016.
Very good. Tell us about your original family. Where do they come from and how did they immigrate to South Africa?
Well, all four of my grandparents came from Lithuania. My father's parents came from a town called Zazmarai in Lithuania. And interestingly, my father's father, when he was born in 1870. In 1889, he and his brother came to the States, and they changed their name from Perchik to Perkins, and they went to Boston, Massachusetts. And after 2 years, my grandfather went back to Lithuania because he didn't like it here. His brother remained in Boston, and interestingly, there is a Jewish Perkins in Dallas, Alan Perkins, who's probably related. He's from Boston. My grandfather then met his wife, Sarah Osrin, and in 1901, they moved to South Africa with their two oldest children. They only had 2 children at the time. They landed up having 8 children. The youngest died at 6 months when he was during the Spanish flu, and in 1918, during the same epidemic, my grandfather died as well. So my grandmother was left with 7 children. The oldest had to go out and work, and one oldest was 11 years old and 12 years old. And my father and his brother went to an orphanage, and they were there for about 4 years. And my father was the only one who got a degree out of all the children. He was a lawyer. He married my mother. My mother's parents came to South Africa from Lithuania, I'm not sure which town, in 1911, and moved to Johannesburg. It's interesting to note that Johannesburg was only about 15 years old in 1901. It was founded in 1886. My mother's parents had 2 daughters, my mother and her sister Isabel. My mother met my father and married him in 1939. And I had a sister who was 13 years older than I am, and she died in 1981 at age 39. She was unmarried, she didn't have any children, and she had cancer. And my brother, I have a brother who still lives in South Africa, and he's 6 years older than I am.
So you're the baby.
So I'm the baby. And I went to med school largely because I knew at some point I wanted something transportable. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but in fact I was thinking of doing physics, but I didn't know how to make a living doing physics, so I chose med school and graduated from med school in 1978, did my internship and then did a year in the army, which was compulsory, and then left to specialize. I did 2 years of fellowship, of residency, and then moved to the States in 1983.
What university were you at?
University of the Witwatersrand, or Witwatersrand as they say in Texas. And I came to Dallas because I had a very good friend here, Alan Pizer, who was a high school buddy of mine, and he'd been nagging me to come. I'd also done an elective in Dallas in 1977, and I'd spent 6 weeks here. So I was somewhat familiar with it. I didn't have a great impression of it because I didn't have a car, and being in Dallas without a car isn't so easy. But I did have a friend. I also had cousins in Connecticut who had moved to Connecticut, so I had the option of going there as well, or to New York. But I came here and I had a green card and no job. So
usually it's the other way around.
Right, and I went to UT Southwestern and they offered me an internship, and I said no thank you. And then I was put in touch with Alan Mentor, and he helped me get a residency for a year at St. Paul Hospital with Joe Verislav and Randy Rosenblatt. And I did a year there, and then I did a fellowship at UT Southwestern for 3 years in hematology and oncology, and spent 5 years on the faculty there until I got married. And my wife felt that academic medicine was not going to cut it, so I went into private practice in 1993, January 1993.
How did you meet? You're right.
Well, I'd exhausted the supply of single Jewish women in Dallas. So I had to go to New York to find my wife. Actually, Annette's mother had a friend who came to Dallas. She was a pathologist. And we met at the med school, and she had asked me if I was interested in meeting someone in New York. I said, sure, and that's how we met, basically, on a blind date in New York, the day after the Rodney King riots.
Oh boy.
We were engaged in 6 weeks and married in 4 months.
How did you persuade her to come here?
I gave her the option of staying in New York or moving to Dallas. And I think she felt that 1,800 miles was about as close to her parents as she wanted to be. So she moved to Dallas. And initially, it was a little tough for her. And after we had a couple of kids, she wanted to move back. I interviewed over there and went there several times, was offered jobs, but felt I'd be retrogressing. So I decided I wasn't going to do it. And now we're both very happy in Dallas, and she loves Dallas and has no regrets about staying here.
I want to back up for just a moment. Can you remember or recall some of your most moving times growing up in South Africa? Some memorable moments when you were younger?
Well, I had a bit of a tough childhood, I have to say. So memorable would be friends, and we had a great family, my father's family. My father was an alcoholic and a gambler. I think he was traumatized by being in an orphanage. He made a lot of money, but he gambled it all away before he paid the taxes.
Oh.
So when he died, when I was 13, a month after my bar mitzvah. He fell asleep with a cigarette and burnt the house down.
Oh my.
That's how he died. And he was insolvent when he died. So we moved to Johannesburg from Pretoria, where we lived until I was 13. And because the family was there. And we were close to the family. I wasn't crazy about the school I was at. It was a good school as far as public schools went. I had great friends, and I still have those friends. And I loved sport, and those were the good things. You know, I played soccer and enjoyed that, and I eventually decided to leave because most of my friends had left.
I was going to ask if you obviously had some friends already here.
Yes.
In Dallas specifically. Did you persuade, or did anybody else come say, hey, maybe it's time to leave South Africa, seeing that you were doing that? Anybody in your family or your friends?
There's no one I persuaded to come. I had cousins in Connecticut, as I mentioned, and most of my close friends had left. And I also thought the future in South Africa was somewhat tenuous. I didn't want to be there when black majority rule. I thought it was the right thing, but I really didn't want to be there. And also, I think I was a bit bored, to be honest. I needed a bit of adventure. And that's why, and I thought the educational opportunities in the States would be better than they were in South Africa.
What in your high school years, or even, high school years, persuaded you that science was the right way to go?
Well, I was good at math and science, but I thought that the opportunities for earning a living would be better in medicine. I actually thought about actuarial science, but I interviewed with a few actuaries, and there were all these weird guys in the penthouse of these insurance companies, alone in these rooms, and there was no formal course in actuarial science. It had to be done by correspondence through the Institute of Actuaries in Edinburgh. So I felt it was a little bit risky, and I knew at some point I'd have to support my mother. So I had to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And I decided med school would be the safest bet. And I have no regrets as far as that's concerned.
That's good. As far as the Jewish community here specifically, what did you do to get involved in that? What have you joined, or what do you feel comfortable with within the Jewish community?
Well, when I came, I was single. Most of the South Africans who came were married, so I didn't hang out with them. And I went to the Jewish singles parties, and used to go to the JCC sometimes. Didn't go to synagogue very often. In fact, for the first 10 years I was here, I think I went maybe 2 or 3 times. I went to Sheriff a couple of times and found the rabbi rather unwelcoming, to be honest, at that time. So I didn't bother with that anymore. But my friends were largely Jewish, and that's how it was being single. When I got married, Annette came from a very orthodox background. She went to yeshiva in New York, and initially we landed up living in the Eruv. We built a house in the Eruv. She wanted to live that kind of lifestyle. But when we had kids and we realized they wanted to play sport and we wanted to watch them play sport, and I really didn't want to live that totally observant lifestyle. So we moved, and we did take our kids out of, they went to Akiba preschool, but all went to private secular schools afterwards. The boys at St. Mark's and Ilana at Hockaday. But two of our kids had bar mitzvahs, and all our kids had bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, and two of them were in Israel. And we got together with the family in Passover. We went to Passover programs in Palm Springs and in Acapulco and in Florida. And they saw their grandparents fairly often, who were observant. So they've been exposed, but we haven't imposed it on them to an extent. And we largely keep kosher at home.
How important or not important was Israel and Zionism when you were growing up?
Israel was very important. My father was a fervent Zionist, more of the revisionist type than the moderate. He was a Jabotinsky admirer, and I remember listening on the radio to Voice of America during the Six-Day War, listening to the progress every day. And we belonged to a Jewish country club in Pretoria, Wingate Country Club, after Ord Wingate, who helped the Jews, trained them. And I had a bar mitzvah, and I used to go every Saturday morning until several years after my bar mitzvah, actually. I went to a Jewish day school until I was 13, until we moved to Johannesburg. So we were exposed, and we were Zionist, and I'm still Zionist, I'm pro-Israel, and it's an important issue for me.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Very good. So once you were here, you said a lot of your friends had already moved out of South Africa. Have you found and connected with them here in the United States, or have they gone elsewhere?
Well, I've got a couple of very good friends in Dallas, Alan Pizer and Adrian Mayer, who I was very friendly with in South Africa. Norma Malamed, or Norma Glass, was a classmate of mine, and we were friendly. And then I've made friends from South Africa here. And I've made American friends, Jewish friends. Because I was single, I couldn't confine myself to South Africans like a lot of the married people did. So I have a number of American friends as well.
Have you joined any professional organizations since you've been here in the medical field?
Well, I'm a member of the American Society of Clinical Oncology and the American Society of Hematology. And that's pretty much it. And the Maimonides group or federation.
Right. That's an important group.
Yeah.
What, if anything, do you miss about life in South Africa?
Not a whole lot, if you want to know. I've never missed South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll be very happy in Dallas.
Honest enough. All right. Do you find, though, that have you brought any of your traditions with you at all, or you've left it behind? That you would consider South African or Jewish traditions from there as opposed to what you've learned here?
Well, I'm not sure they're South African, but they're more Lithuanian or Eastern European. For example, I like pickled herring. And my wife's they're really yakkers, and they don't like pickled herring. We like chopped herring and kibble, things like that. Yeah. So there are some food differences, but it's really confined to that to a large extent.
Have you had a chance to go back and visit?
I used to go twice a year when my mother was alive. She died about 10 years ago, and I've been once since then. I have my brother in Johannesburg still, and I have cousins in Johannesburg, and we're in touch with each other. And they came to Israel for the kids' bar mitzvahs and things like that.
Have they been able to come here to visit at all?
Well, my brother has. My cousins came here a while back. It's been a long time since they were here. My cousins in Connecticut.
Right, right. Well, that's good. Talk about citizenship.
I became a citizen in 1990. So as soon as the 5 years residence was up, I applied and became a citizen in 1990. Yeah.
Did you have help from anybody, or you just
No.
did it all on your own?
Well, I was legally here,
Mm-hmm.
so I was eligible to apply as soon as I'd been here 5 years. So I waited a year after I applied and contacted them to find out what the status of my application was, and they had no record of it.
Oh,
So I told them that I didn't see why I had to be victimized by their incompetence. And 2 months later, I was asked to come and swear myself in as a citizen. So sometimes being nasty may help.
yeah, unfortunately. Give me a little feeling of what does it mean to you to have your U.S. citizenship?
It means I can make the same mistakes that all you people make. It means I could vote for Donald Trump if I want.
Very good.
But no, I mean it's a good feeling. But I didn't really feel that different when I had South African citizenship. In fact, now it's easier when you travel to have a South African citizenship, a South African passport than an American passport. I remember the other way around when I used to travel in Europe, we'd be harassed when we had South African passports. But no, I love this country. I think it's a great country. I think it's got a lot of problems and faults, but it's still the best place to live.
And where are your children now?
We have 4 kids. My oldest Lee's at UT Austin. He's going to graduate probably in December because he's taking an extra semester. I think he's going to play video games and stay at home after he qualifies. And I'll pay him $100 a month, and that'll be his destiny. I've got a son, Michael, who's at Dartmouth, and he's majoring in economics, and he's a sophomore. And I've got a son, Sam, who's a sophomore at Princeton, and he's also majoring in economics. And my daughter, Ilana, is a senior in high school. She's graduating this week, and she's at Hockaday, and she's going to Princeton as well.
Ah, mazel tov.
So as my son Michael says, you bought 4 tickets to the lottery, one of them should come in.
Mazel tov on all of that. That's wonderful. The last thing I want to ask you, and then you're welcome to add anything you want, is basically, you've said it a bit, but in your own words again, are you glad you came here and why?
I'm very glad I came here because when I left South Africa, the only topic of conversation was whether we're going to leave or not. It got very tiresome, discussing whether we should stay or whether we should leave. My life wasn't a bad thing. I didn't come in desperation. I was in a good situation. I was in a residency program. I was well thought of, and I wasn't unhappy. So I was a little bit ambivalent when I left because, there's risk and uncertainty and you don't know what's going to happen. But, and people who stayed still had a good life. But no, I've never regretted it. I've been very happy here. I love this country. I love Dallas. Everywhere we go, doesn't matter where it is, I ask my kids, would you rather live here or in Dallas? And they're unanimous. They'd rather live in Dallas. I think the quality of life here is hard to beat in terms of the hassle factor, educational opportunities for the kids, the ease of life and the opportunities. And we have the best airport in the world.
Except it's always under construction.
No, but it's easy to get
Still
anywhere.
good, yeah.
Compare it to LaGuardia.
Right. We don't have troubles with the
Yeah.
TRA that everybody else is having.
And I'm happy in my career. I had great opportunities at UT Southwestern. Did the fellowship, trained under Gene Frankel, who's a great guy.
Oh, yeah.
Love Gene Frankel. And I have no regrets.
Well, I thank you very much for this interview. It's been wonderful.
Sure.
Appreciate it.